All right, so moving to coastal North Carolina was one of the best decisions that me and my family have ever made. However, it's not all cupcakes and rainbows. When I moved here, I didn't have a channel like this to give you all of the pertinent information that you need in order to feel comfortable making the move. And so in this video, I'm going over some of the things that maybe I didn't know, but also things that kind of shocked me about moving to coastal North Carolina. Let's hop into it. All right, and if we haven't met yet, I'm Avery. I'm with the Legacy Group at eXp Realty, and as much as I love making these videos for you guys about all things living in coastal North Carolina, I would love even more to help you with your real estate needs. So the phone number and email address popping up on the screen. I am the one that responds to all the calls, texts, and emails, and I would love to have a conversation with you and see how I can best help. But with that being said, guys, there is a lot of things that I didn't know about moving to this area, some things that shocked me, surprised me, and there's things that surprise my clients every single day as they reach out. But unfortunately, a lot of it too is one of those things you have to see it to believe it. And so the first thing that you have to see to believe, or at least feel to believe, is the slower pace of life. And if you're coming from the Northeast or a northern state, or maybe out west, you hear about a slow pace of life in the South. And look, take it from me, it is absolutely true. This past month of May, we had my daughter's birthday party. We had just about everybody seemingly in my family come and visit, and things got absolutely crazy. Things got wild, and it was just a bit too much for my wife and I. We found ourselves saying, man, we are really used to living a slow pace of life that we didn't even know, right? All of these people coming to visit, all of this planning for my daughter's birthday party, not to mention everything needed to be maintained in the household, everything needed to be maintained in my business, so on and so forth. You get it, that's life. But we didn't realize how slow of a lifestyle we actually have here in coastal North Carolina. And I can assure you that when we lived in upstate New York, it was not nearly this slow. So the first thing that really surprised me is coming to that realization that honestly was just this past month of how slow paced this lifestyle actually is here in coastal North Carolina. Now, the other thing that you sort of have to see to believe, or witness to believe, is the strong sense of community. A lot of the areas around here are smaller towns, smaller areas that really have a small population in the off season. Obviously, we have a massive influx of people when it comes to peak season or vacation season, but on the day-to-day, it is a relatively small area. Pretty much everywhere in eastern or coastal North Carolina is a small town. Even Wilmington, North Carolina, 250,000 residents is really not that much compared to the larger metros of Charlotte, Raleigh. So people begin to know each other. There's only so many people that can connect on a local Facebook group. There's only so many people that can own businesses around here and actually go to the businesses or to the restaurants or the grocery stores and things like that. So when we talk about having a strong sense of community, it absolutely is. We, generally speaking, know each other. We might not know them personally, we might only know the name or maybe the face, but we come together during festivals, we come together during hard times, we see each other at the grocery stores, at the restaurants on a frequent basis, and of course we have the onesie twosies that come in, come visit, or maybe are visiting from another town. But the sense of community really is strong here. And it's one thing that my family, having visited several times at this point, has absolutely picked up on since visiting. And then the third thing, this is something that I've learned from you guys, from all of my clients and people reaching out from YouTube, is that you get a lot more house for the dollar here in coastal North Carolina. And of course, this is community specific, because there are communities that are very expensive, like Landfall or Waterstone, areas like that that are a little bit more expensive for what you get because it's a luxury neighborhood, or maybe it has some sweet amenities or things like that. But generally speaking, you can get a lot more house at an affordable cost compared to many other areas of the United States. I know that my Northeastern folks, you know, coming from New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, right? You're used to spending $600,000 on a 1,500 square foot house. Well, here you are at a minimum of 2,000 square feet for that 600 number. And so with that, a lot of times when people come from those states that are a little bit more expensive with smaller homes, they're in awe at what they can actually afford here in coastal North Carolina. But honestly, I feel like the prices are all relative, because where I come from in upstate New York, you could buy houses for $200,000, $300,000, and they were beautiful houses. But here in coastal North Carolina, you really can't find a lot of quality homes under $300,000. There are still some builders in the Jacksonville area sort of building for the high 200s, like 260, 70, 80, but most areas are gonna be up over 300,000. So I say it's relative because, you know, coming from upstate New York, we could get those prices in the 200,000s. They were cheap homes. But here in coastal North Carolina, I think it's hard pressed to find homes in the 100s or 200s. And then moving on, number 4 are just, I didn't really expect the natural beauty that coastal North Carolina has. Yes, of course, everybody sort of glamorizes the beaches and the sunrise over the ocean, things like that. But I think people highly, and I did, highly underestimate the marsh or the sound or intercoastal waterway. There's some unexpected beauty in the marsh, whether it's the sunsets over the marsh, whether it's just boating or the serenity of being out there and how calm and tame the water is, or just the wildlife out there, whether it's birds or you find some other animal that's out there. Coastal North Carolina is home to many, many animals that you wouldn't expect. And yes, that means alligators, that means cougars, but all of it, in my opinion at least, is beautiful, and a lot of it is unexpected because you don't really think about that when you're thinking about moving to the beach. You don't think about the marsh, the fact that it's a barrier island and you kind of get both sides of it. There's beauty everywhere, just from boats putzing along on the intercoastal to all of the islands that you get to hang out with your kiddos, and then just driving down the road and you see these big oaks with Spanish moss and feeling like that southern charm type feel. It's absolutely everywhere, and it's something that I highly underestimated. And then number 5 is that each town has its own vibe, its own charm, its own personality. And for example, Morehead City is a beautiful town, but it's more known for its fishing and some of its historic feel and that kind of thing too, but it feels more like a fishing area. Whereas if you go to downtown Wilmington, you get a little bit more of that artsy vibe, the craftsy vibe, as well as the historic vibe that downtown Wilmington has to offer. And then you get a bit of a luxurious vibe in Wilmington as well. New Bern is very much the same, but New Bern is much older, much smaller, but still has a amazing boat vibe within its downtown. But then you have the secluded yet charming little town of like Sunset Beach, for example, where it is in the rural part of Brunswick County, yet it is voted the 8th best beach in the entire world by Nat Geo. So when I say that every town has its own vibe or own personality, it absolutely does. And there's things to love about each and every town. You might move from somewhere and see Morehead City or New Bern, for example, as a nice town to visit on a weekend and grab a beer, maybe go boating or do something like that. And you actually want to live in Wilmington or vice versa. So you'll figure it out pretty quickly what vibe you like, because as you drive through, you really get that sense. All right, number 6 is that North Carolina in general is a military-friendly state, and that gives you a level of grounding and patriotism. We have patriotic events year-round, as well as just the sounds of freedom, whether it is some artillery going off at Camp Lejeune, whether it's a helicopter flying over your house, or just the many museums around North Carolina that teach the military history within the state. All of which is a sense of grounding, a sense of patriotism, and quite frankly, everybody that I've talked to that moves to the area, they're worried about it up front because of the noise level and that kind of thing, but end up absolutely loving it and adore the area for that reason. And number 7 is the access to outdoor living. And it sounds so silly that I'm even saying this, but in all seriousness, whether you are starting your morning by having a cup of coffee on the patio or the porch, because it stays warm here, or you're kayaking on one of the rivers or the intercoastal waterway, or spending your day at the beach, or just watching your kids play on the play set in the backyard. Access to the outdoors is absolutely abundant here, and one of the main reasons that I moved here from upstate New York. We didn't want to deal with the 6-month-long winters, the gloomy skies all the time, and quite frankly, just being miserable because of the weather year-round. So when we moved here, we made sure that we bought a house with a large back patio that we could sit, have our drinks, eat dinner on, be together as a family, host friends, and still watch our daughter play in the backyard while still having close proximity to the beaches, the waterways, and everything else that everybody moves to coastal North Carolina for. And so this is by far one of my favorite things about North Carolina, is just the access to outdoor living. It really is a lifestyle. If you move here and you're a hermit and you stay inside all the time, you're probably gonna be miserable, to be honest with you. This is a very outdoor friendly area. Everybody is active, everybody's doing something outside, whether it's just, like actual water activities, or you're just sitting out at a restaurant on the patio, enjoying the weather and enjoying a good meal. It's all here and it is absolutely abundant. All right, and now moving on to the not so great aspects of it. And so number 1 is hurricane anxiety. So you've heard me talk about hurricanes, and most of them are not so bad. Most of them you really don't have to worry about, and most of the time the locals are throwing quote unquote hurricane parties. When we get big storms and stuff, the locals kind of go crazy and they'll start stocking up on their sausages, hot dogs, hamburgers, so on and so forth, and have a hurricane party. But with that said, what nobody really tells you is that you carry all of this insurance for hurricanes. So you have your homeowners, wind and hail insurance, and then you have your flood insurance as well, and any additional insurances that you choose. But you also carry the anxiety of a potential hurricane. As we get into hurricane season, people are more and more worried and more glued to the news and the Weather Channel, wondering, where's this next hurricane coming from? What is this tropical storm looking like? Is it going to elevate to a hurricane or not, right? Making sure that prior to hurricane season, you are prepared with batteries, with food, with a generator, so on and so forth. Just making sure that you're ready to go if and when a hurricane does impact coastal North Carolina. It is rare that we get those big hurricanes, the Hurricane Florence type hurricanes, or anything that's higher than like a Cat 2 hurricane. However, it is possible and it does happen and it has happened. So we need to be prepared, and I'd be lying to you if I told you that people weren't anxious about it. And number 2 is that the humidity here is ruthless. A lot of people moving from the West Coast in California or areas like that, maybe even Texas, where everything is very dry, you may have a hard time with the humidity here. It's just so different. And at first, I thought it was pretty bad until I lived here for a while. I got used to it, and then I visited upstate New York again in June, mid-June, for some family photos, and I was absolutely dying from the humidity in upstate New York. It was so bad. But people coming from the West Coast or other places that is not that humid come here and have a hard time adjusting. I had some friends move from San Diego, California, here due to the military, and they struggled for a couple months just trying to get a grasp on how to breathe properly in the humidity and how not to sweat all the time when you step outside your door. But when you're here for about a month, 2 months, you really do get used to it. You go through one full summer season and you're used to it at this point. You're looking forward to the next summer because the weather is actually so nice once you get used to it. But it absolutely can be a shock for a lot of people. And then number 3 on the not so great are bugs and critters. And I'm talking about mosquitoes, palmetto bugs, no-see-ums or gnats, talking about snakes and beetles and cockroaches. They all are very real here in coastal North Carolina, and they scare people that aren't used to these kind of bugs or these kind of critters. You know, snakes are the biggest thing. Learning how to identify snakes and whether or not they're a threat to you, your animals, your kids, or not, right? I have a rat snake that lives out under my pool in the backyard, and he's a big boy. He's thick, and he slithers around and he goes under my pool. That's where he lives. But I think he takes all of the rats and the mice and stuff away from my chickens, because I have 23 chickens, a rooster, and 2 ducks. I think they take all of those critters away from my chickens so that they're not eating my chickens' food. So we let them be. However, copperheads, rattlesnakes, those kind of things are absolutely prevalent here too. And if you go out in the woods, if you go in some unmanicured area, you're more likely to see them. So it is important to understand what kind of snakes, what kind of bugs exist here in coastal North Carolina so that you can identify them and make sure that they're not a threat to you, your family, or your pets. And then the other thing is limited shopping and dining. So I talk about all the time how great the restaurant scene is here in coastal North Carolina. However, it's really dependent on what you're looking for. The thing I have yet to find here in this area is a top of the line quality hibachi restaurant. I haven't quite found one that is up to me and my wife's standards. In upstate New York, we have a phenomenal hibachi restaurant that has sort of just skewed our perspective on hibachi, but we haven't been able to find that here. And then in terms of shopping, depending on where you're coming from, you might be looking for a Trader Joe's. You might need a Target or a Super Walmart pretty within 5 minutes of your house. That kind of thing. Not all areas of coastal North Carolina have those bigger stores that you can get to within 30 minutes or so. Where I live in Holly Ridge, it takes about 30 minutes to get down to Target or to get to a Super Walmart or any other big shopping center outside of like a neighborhood grocery, maybe a Publix or a Harris Teeter. Like, I have everything I need, but some of the bigger stores that my wife likes to go shop at, it does take a little over 30 minutes to get there. And so I've talked with a lot of you guys that want to be next to all of those conveniences. Some areas just aren't gonna be for you. So let's have that conversation and I can kind of steer you in the right direction whether or not you want to be in certain areas because of those shopping centers or just those conveniences in general. And then healthcare is pretty much the same, depending on what you have going on with your body, your health, that kind of thing. It may take you a while to travel to a specialist. If you have cancer, a lot of people will go to the oncology in like Chapel Hill, in the Raleigh area, the Durham area, which can be about 2 to 3 hours, depending on where you're coming from. So, you know, research the hospital centers, research the specialists that you need for your health conditions so that you can make an educated choice. Because here in the coastal part of North Carolina, we have urgent cares, we have eye doctors, dentists, we have hospitals and trauma centers and stuff, but there's some things that some people lack, you know, like the oncology centers and that kind of thing. So whatever your specific needs are, look into where those specialists are and recommendations for those specialists. I can help you out with some of it, but I'm learning something new in that realm every single day. So do your research and make sure that this area, the coastal part of North Carolina, is gonna be you know, a good option for you. And then the other thing that I absolutely hate is that you pay a personal property tax every single year. Those of you that are moving here for boating, you're gonna pay a property tax on that every single year. Those of you that are car enthusiasts and maybe you have multiple cars to drive on a daily basis, you're gonna be paying taxes on all of those cars every single year. And the same is true for RVs or any camper that you have to register. If you register it as personal property or a vehicle, you are gonna be paying taxes on that. That is something that's not common in other states, but it is absolutely common here. And then the other thing is what I've found, just being from the Northeast, is that construction timelines in this area are loose, to say the least. Not many custom home builders, not many renovation specialists or contractors will actually stick to their timelines. There's such thing as island time, and that's one thing that I've really had to learn here in coastal North Carolina, specifically in my real estate business, because people don't answer the phone when you want them to. They don't return your call when you want them to, or your email. Their timelines get pushed back pretty drastically sometimes. And then when you couple that with having to deal with CAMA or having to deal with the zoning office, the county zoning office, and things like that, it just makes the timeline so much longer. You know, when I was living in New York, we did have a lot of red tape to build houses, to put decks on houses, to cover decks, that kind of thing. But it seems like island time is a real thing here, because not only are the county zoning officials living on island time when it comes to approving your requests and that kind of thing, but contractors are, suppliers are, everybody else is living on island time. And when everyone's living on island time but you, it can be quite annoying. Having a northeastern work ethic and just living, you know, sort of that faster pace of life for so long, moving to island time was quite a big shock for me. I didn't make a lot of friends to begin with because I'm pushing people to respond to me, to give me answers when they simply are on island time and they don't like responding that quick. So it's something quite difficult to learn, but as you live here longer, you become more and more used to it, unfortunately. And you know, things still get done, but it might be a little bit slower. And then the other thing that I completely just misunderstood moving here was the seasonal swings in the community. And I'm specifically talking about tourist season. So you'll notice as a local here, we have our nice close-knit community. A lot of people know a lot of people, right? You see the same people every single day with your, you know, when you're going shopping, restaurants, that kind of thing. But then we have holidays and then, you know, June through August of tourist season, right? You'll see an explosion, a huge influx of people because kids are out of school and all of that stuff. But you see an explosion of people in the area, and then the next day, it'll feel like it's a ghost town, right? You sort of have that seasonal swing. We as locals, we kind of hunker down during the tourist season because we have our spots, right? We go to our spots during tourist season that maybe is not our first choice, but we know where we're gonna get a little bit more elbow room. We know the restaurants that aren't as frequented by tourists. So we go to all these places, right? But then one day, everything's just gonna be kind of like desolate, and you notice, oh, all the tourists are gone. So let's go back to our normal day-to-day, our conveniences, restaurants, so on and so forth, and you get back to the grind. But it truly is a swing, and you'll notice it, you'll get used to it, you'll notice the traffic patterns, all of that stuff. But I kind of underestimated it when I moved here, and I think people's biggest problem is that they underestimate it when they move here. And so the best thing that you can do is take a trip during peak season, during a holiday weekend, something like that, to really get a good feel for what it feels like tourist season. And then when you become a local, you can sort of wind back, figure out where you're gonna go for dinner, you know, nights out, that kind of thing. And you'll feel a little bit more at ease because you're not just being bombarded by the influx of tourists. And now moving on to the surprises that sort of shifted my perspective on living here. You know, the first thing, since I'm a realtor, I have a real estate business, I am very shocked that we have pretty much all markets here in coastal North Carolina. We have areas that are a buyer's market, we have areas that are a seller's market, and then we have areas that are in the middle. And it's super weird to say, and you know, the majority of the United States has these little micro markets, right? Where I'm from in upstate New York, we had micro markets. One neighborhood, you know, is in the 200,000s, and the neighborhood right next to it, just a different street, is 500,000s, right? So we have these micro markets, and that's true everywhere in the United States. However, here in coastal North Carolina, it's a little bit more house specific. If the seller has treated their house well and the house shows really nicely. It's good space, it's a desirable floor plan, and it has a nice fenced in backyard, things like that, it's gonna zip off the market. In the same token, if the seller didn't take care of the house, maybe it's just not, freshly updated, it's not a desirable floor plan, maybe the yard is too small, or it's not fenced, it has some less than desirable aspects to it, then that house is gonna sit longer on the market. And it's also a very smart market, meaning that buyers and agents alike are aware if a house is overpriced, and it will sit on the market due to the fact that it's overpriced. The seller will absolutely learn their lesson. I've called the bluff of sellers several times with investor clients of mine, buyer clients of mine, and we've won because we called the bluff. They ended up lowering the price anyway, and then we got the contract. So I've done that multiple times to help my buyers win. So with that said, there's a little bit of everything in this area in terms of pricing, in terms of whether the market's hot or cold, seller's market, buyer's market in the middle. There's a little bit of everything, and that's one thing that really surprised me because it's not like that everywhere. And then the other thing is the local government and municipal departments that really put restrictions on what you can and can't do. And two specific examples that I'd like to give are the impervious footage restrictions that you have in your yard. Because we are more susceptible to flooding, coastal part of North Carolina obviously, is a little bit more permeable than other areas of the United States and or even North Carolina. But the government limits how much concrete we can put in our yards. And the reason for that is because they want to make sure that properties can drain themselves pretty easily. And so if you're looking at doing a big in-ground pool with a nice concrete patio and that kind of thing, we really need to look into the impervious footage requirements in that specific area and what the house is already taking up. Because if that is gonna be your main stipulation in buying a house, we may not want to put offer on that house for that reason. And so with that said, that's one thing that I didn't know and I had to learn kind of as I went. But the other thing is just CAMA restrictions in terms of what you can build on the coastline. Obviously, we're trying to preserve the coastline. We're trying to do everything we can to make sure that people are living in a safe environment and also maintain our environment and make sure that our shoreline's not eroding more than it has to, and so on and so forth. And so CAMA restrictions are there for a reason. But if you don't know that they exist, if you don't know what those restrictions are, you may buy a house that is really not suited for you and what your long-term vision is. So you need to get with someone who can guide you in the right direction and make sure you have that information up front. And with that, locals tend to become hyper aware of what's going on in the environment, whether it's the erosion of the shoreline or it's natural habitats of turtles and dolphins and fish and things like that. Picking up trash on the beach is a common thing for locals. In fact, most of the time my family goes to the beach, we come out with a shopping bag full of trash that we just acquired from walking up and down the beach, whether it's a straw, whether it's glass, trash, wrappers, beer cans, whatever. We have super clean beaches here in North Carolina, but tourists and other people make mistakes. People leave things behind. And so when you're hyper aware of this stuff, you tend to go out of your way to keep it clean and to pick up trash and things like that. So that is one thing that I never really realized before moving here, but is absolutely a thing since moving here. And last but not least, something that really shifted my perspective and really just living the coastal lifestyle is that you really don't need many things, right? The houses here, we don't have basements. We have very little attic space most of the time. There's some really cool builds. You get a lot of great attic space, but we don't have a ton of storage in the coastal area. And so really what you need is some shirts, pants, underwear, and flip-flops, and you're good to go. Maybe a jacket for some breezy nights, but really don't need a whole lot. You're gonna have your boat, you're gonna have your beach toys, maybe some bikes, a kayak, things like that to get active, but you don't need as much as people have in the Northeast. And I can say that definitively because I lived in the Northeast and I had a lot of stuff. And when I came here, I was forced to downsize, but it's really nice. It's a bit more of a simple life. And we really don't need that. And you find that you really learn to live life a little bit more simply. So with all that being said, guys, I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or if you're looking at making a move to coastal North Carolina, or maybe you're local and you're looking to sell a house locally and buy somewhere else, I am your guy. My phone number and email address on the screen. That is the best way to get in contact with me. I am the guy that responds to all the calls, texts, and emails, and I would absolutely love to hear from you and see how I can best help. But with that being said, till the next video, peace. We'll see you later. Bye.